What's up, everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast, and I'm not sure how many of you have been listening to the news lately. I'm sure all you have. I haven't made a video since this occurred, but as of Wednesday of last week, there's been news of SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, that basically went insolvent. And there's a lot of news because this is reminiscent of 2008, and there's a lot of exposure from startups and other companies in that area, in the Silicon Valley area, that had ties to this bank. And as I cover the news on this, then there's a lot of it. I won't be able to cover it all today, but you'll see the magnitude of this. And here is a tweet saying, "You're living through Federal Reserve 2.0 right now. It's a war. Doesn't it feel like one?" So look at this explanation by Glenn Beck on the creation of the Federal Reserve by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and how those are the men that represented a quarter of the wealth of the entire world. Take a listen.
That I'll tell you. These guys were all competitive. The Federal Reserve Act wasn't drafted in Congress. It was drafted on a private island off the coast of Georgia in 1910. Here is the island, Jekyll Island. And it was drafted under great secrecy. Jekyll Island was the retreat for billionaires like William Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. And in 1910, Senator Nelson Aldrich, the Republican whip in the Senate and the chair of the National Monetary Commission, sent his private railroad car to the New Jersey Railroad Station, where he and 5 other men were instructed to come one at a time and everybody pretend they just didn't know each other. Aldrich, who is the guy, remember, he wrote the original bill? He was a business associate of J.P. Morgan. Oh, and the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr. So there's no special interest happening there. There was also Abram Piatt Andrew, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, and Frank Vanderlip, representing William Rockefeller, Henry Davidson and Benjamin Strong with J.P. Morgan, and Paul Warburg. He was a partner at Kuhn, Loeb and Company. He was representing the Rothschild banking family. Oh, he's going to talk about the Rothschilds now. He actually is an interesting character. If you ever saw Little Orphan Annie, Daddy Warbucks was named after Warburg. These are the men that represented 1/4 of the entire wealth of the world. You think we got a problem with wealth now? Those guys, 1/4 of all of the money in the world. The Morgans, the Rockefellers, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds, all in one room. Yeah, but when do they start sacrificing chickens? Well, it doesn't happen. That I'll tell you. These guys were all competitors. According to G. Edward Griffin, who we'll talk to in a minute, they all had come together to form a banking cartel so they didn't have to compete against each other. He says it was like an oil cartel or a sugar cartel, but this cartel actually went into partnership with the government. I mean, how great is that, huh? It's kind of like the drug cartels in Mexico. Wait, I didn't say that out loud, did I? So for more than a week, these men sat around there. And they sat around this big table and they hammered out all the details of what became the Federal Reserve System with 5 objectives. How many of these do you agree with? 1, to stop the growing competition from the nation's newer banks. That doesn't sound good. 2, to obtain a franchise to create money out of nothing for the purpose of lending. That one really doesn't sound good either. 3, to get control of the reserves of all of the banks so the reckless ones wouldn't be exposed to currency drains or bank runs. Oh, that's the charity part. Golly gee, beef. Thank you so much. Then, to shift the losses from the bank owners to the taxpayers. It just gets better and better for you and me, doesn't it? No. Again, the answer is no. And then finally, to convince Congress that the purpose was to protect the public.
And there you have it. I mean, and if you haven't read the book, Creature of Jekyll Island, I highly recommend that you kind of peruse and try to find out some more about it. Here we see looks like the Treasury sent 40 billion to the FDIC, which would be for support for the depositors. And you know, it seems that this is setting precedent for the future, where the government steps in, the Treasury, Federal Reserve, and they provide help and they cover all of this. Now, what kind of precedent does that set? Well, now bankers will continue the reckless behavior, and they'll have almost as a like guarantee. Oh, we mess up, we're gonna be bailed out here, and there won't be any consequences. So we're gonna see what that turns out in the next coming year, 2, 3 down the line. Here we see the derivatives ranking, and it seems to me Silicon Valley was the 16th largest bank in the U.S. And it's also, in terms of derivatives, it's the 33rd largest derivative bank or holdings for banks, I believe, around the world. And here, and this is what's interesting because there was a lot of crypto ties to the Silicon Valley Bank. And here in this tweet, it says historic inflation, bank runs, uninsured depositor bailouts, Fed facilities to mask unrealized bank losses. Another projected decade of deficit spending is on the horizon. You see that hash rate's all-time high, mining difficulties at all-time high. Bitcoin has been held for 1+ years, all-time high, and there's 19.3 million of the 21 million coins that are currently in circulation. So, what do you think's gonna happen next? Where do investors shift their view towards? Where can they put their money if they're, if all this is going on? Where can they trust that their money will be safe and produce returns? You got to see how this whole Bitcoin and decentralization narrative can become stronger and grow, especially because it, quote unquote, won't have any counterparty risk. At least that's the narrative surrounding Bitcoin. So, moving on here. It says Barney Frank openly admits that Signature was arbitrarily shuttered despite no insolvency because regulators wanted to kill off the last major pro-crypto bank. Colossal scandal. And I know you can't see this whole thing, but it says, for his part, Frank, who helped draft the landmark Dodd-Frank Act after the 2008 financial crisis, said there was no real objective reason the Signature had to be seized. I think part of what happened was that regulators wanted to send a very strong anti-crypto message, Frank said. We became the poster boy because there was no insolvency based on the fundamentals. So, could be that this is a war that it doesn't have to be directly intended towards crypto, but it was part of the fallout because it targeted many areas. But this could be one of the target areas. And here is Jamie Dimon talking about governments crushing Bitcoin. And this is the other the view of like trying to attack crypto. And the tweet says, "You're warned, killing Bitcoin would be the final kill shot. Everyone in this space has ignored the fact that the government has admitted on video they met with the 4 Satoshis. Why do you think they haven't come out and addressed this? Why have they pretended for all these years that it was some unknown person?" Listen to Jamie Dimon speak.
Only value of a Bitcoin is what the other guy will pay for. And I think, honestly, I think there's a good chance that Bitcoin, a lot of the buyers out there are up there jazzing up every day so that maybe you'll buy it too and take them out. And I quite mean that, by the way. These people are very good at manipulating the press these days and getting news out. And so every day, you have CNBC, nonstop Bitcoin. Who cares about Bitcoin? I mean, the world's economy is so big. We move, JP Morgan alone, these companies, $6 trillion. We move all this money. And Bitcoin in total is all these currencies are $50 billion, maybe $1 billion trades a day. And the other thing I've always made of Bitcoin, governments, and this is not a technological statement, governments are going to crush it one day. Governments like to know where the money is, who has it, and what you're doing with it. And in case you haven't noticed, okay? And governments like to control their currency.
There you have it.
Value of a Bitcoin.
Eventually, you gotta wonder, especially with CBDCs around the corner, how it's all gonna shake out. But in the interim, I think that this cryptocurrency market could help them eventually get to their ultimate goal of CBDCs. And they will use it as much as they have to. And so with that, I'll leave it at this video. There's a lot of other information that I'll have to cover in the coming days. But I'm telling you, it's getting spicy out there. And it begs the question on a lot of things. So thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. It's the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.